TPR.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 124. This is the second intro I am recording for this episode because I just realized I was speaking and the camera was not recording. So, intro number two. This episode is with Ahmer Naqvi. It's a bit of a rushed episode in the sense that it's about an article that he wrote that was published on Friday. We recorded the episode today, which is Sunday, and it is coming out on Monday. So, bit of a rush. The article itself is about, like I mentioned, the piece he wrote for the 52 about biryani in Karachi. An oversimplification, but it's basically he's gone through the history of biryani in the region, specifically in Karachi, spoken to 8 different chefs across a bunch of demographics, gotten to know how they make it, developments in the thing, historical movements in the biryani scene, and much more. The podcast, this episode that you're listening to, is about the process of coming up with this article. So it's going to be about how he's been thinking about this for like 3-4 years when he wasn't living in Karachi, and when he came back, he spoke to different people, approached it from different angles, how it was supposed to be a web series first and turned into, morphed into different things. So the structure of the episode, firstly, it's a process episode, so you need to read the article, in my opinion, before listening. It's linked in the description. There's going to be a lot in the description. And what you will also notice in this same description is the chapters. They're going to be different from our usual. We're not doing like question, answer. It's question and then a long description of the process and the various angles and variables and, ins and outs of his thought process that led to the answer to what my question was. So yeah, it's going to be interesting seeing how I decide to deal with the chapters and how the clips come out on the TBR Clips channel. Follow if you haven't, subscribe if you haven't. But yeah, I think overall it's a fascinating insight into what I consider a fascinating article. If you're a fan of biryani, if you're a fan of history, local history, cultural history, food history, oral history of the region, socioeconomic development, a lot of different things. If you're just interested in Karachi, biryani, and the relationship of everything in between, that article, and by extension, this episode, are important listens, watches, reads, whatever. So, without further ado, returning guest Ahmer Naqvi, Pod 124. हाँ बस यही सीन था फिर कि I read the article कल. I think you put it up earlier yesterday. मैंने जरा रात को पढ़ा and फौरन मैंने मैसेज कर दिया because there's nothing real unless it's on a podcast. तो मैंने कहा ऐसे ही बात कर लेते हैं जल्दी. But yes, thank you very much for coming. Were you satisfied with the response to the music wali episode that we did?
Yeah, I mean, um, I think it was just a very limited kind of goals for it, which was just an opportunity to kind of lay out on the record some of these things.
Yeah.
And I'm happy I got a chance to do that.
People loved it. I mean, I don't know if that came across to you, but लोग मतलब दीवाने हो गए थे. One of our हमारा setup छोटा ही है, but हमारे हिसाब से by far one of our most watched, successful, longest view duration wali cheese. So, I mean, what you have to say, people really wanted to listen to. But हाँ, तो
Thank you.
अब हमने एक बिल्कुल ही related topic बात की, which is biryani. And you have long been a proponent of. I mean, I don't know. When I first found out about you, you were just a Twitter guy. And then it was then Acha music is a big deal for Ahmer. And then uske baad, in the past 1 year, there has been a lot of food situation in your Twitter life, at least. Like I see a lot of baking, I see a lot of food related discussions, ye sari baatein, which I didn't perhaps notice as much before. And also, like, you've been baking more and more complicated things. But I know that food has to be like a old interest of yours. Biryani wala scene, also I've seen you talk about, and people on Twitter love to talk about, biryani versus pulao, Karachi versus Lahore. Ye sab to scene hota hi rehta hai. But yeah, abhi, the main focus of this discussion being your very expansive piece on wo biryani, and why Karachi might have the best, sort of landscape of biryani in the world. This was something also that I saw you just tweet, Amy, and I did not see realize or appreciate कि इसके पीछे there was like thought process. मुझे लगा कि ये भी बस एक tweet थी जैसे लोग करते हैं tweet. तो how, where did this idea like beyond bands, when did you start to think about like investigating this situation?
Yeah, I feel like the kind of stuff I write on or work with, the common thread, whether it's cricket or music or food, is that it's stuff that's popular culture, it's stuff that a lot of people like,
Mm,
stuff that brings people together. I think like that always kind of appeals to me. Um, and I think, especially in Pakistan, particularly because of a lack of options for leisure and entertainment, um, uh, and all kinds of other reasons, like food एक इतना अहम हमारी शनाख्त का हिस्सा है,
yeah.
राइट? लाइक कि सिर्फ ये नहीं है कि हमें बहुत खाने का शौक है, इट्स आई थिंक हमारी नजर में वो हमें डिफाइन करता है। और आई थिंक स्पेशली अगर आप मुल्क से बाहर जाते हैं तो वो रिश्ता जो है वो उसकी यू बिकम लॉट मोर अवेयर ऑफ इट। आपके दिमाग के अंदर लाइक द मिनट यू आर आउटसाइड पाकिस्तान यू ईटिंग फूड दैट यू आर नॉट अकस्टम्ड टू, तो उस पॉइंट पे आपको बहुत ज्यादा घर का खाना याद आ रहा है, हो रहा है, हो रहा है। ऑब्वियसली अब ये मैं जनरल बात कर रहा हूँ, सबका वैसा रिश्ता नहीं होगा फूड के साथ, मगर पाकिस्तानियों में, साउथ एशियंस में बहुत ज्यादा है।
Mm,
और आई थिंक एक और चीज ये भी है कि ये क्यूजीन इतनी ग्लोबलाइज नहीं है, तो जब आप बाहर होते भी हैं तो आपको वो उसकी एक्सेस की कम और ना ही सिर्फ कम मिलती है, मगर it also makes you start questioning those labels, right? Like कि आप इंडियन फूड खाने जाते हैं जब अमेरिका में,
yeah.
तो वो बेसिकली आपको पंजाबी कश्मीरी क्यूजीन मिलती है।
Yeah.
और वो भी मतलब पंजाबी कश्मीरी नहीं है, जस्ट काइंड ऑफ अडॉप्ट some of their tactics and approaches, where it's obviously bastardized for the West. And अब उसमें फिर थोड़ा सा कहीं पे कबाब मिल रहे हैं, कहीं पे निहारी मिल रही है, whatever, but it's something that kind of makes you realize, like for example, you think like why does all the chicken tikka look this red and whatever, and then you realize, oh, okay, this is tandoori chicken, and the
Yeah.
Punjabis in South Asia make it that way, and etc. तो वहीं से आपको थोड़ी सी मतलब ना अपने बारे में या अपने इलाके के बारे में थोड़ा ज्यादा समझ आना शुरू हो जाता है। I feel like in terms of writing on food, like when I moved to Islamabad in 2012, so I think
Mm,
around that time I'd written this article on savor pulao, because
mm,
I think up until then मेरे दिमाग में ये था कि like ठीक बिरयानी पूरे पाकिस्तान में लोग खाते हैं, और ठीक है पुलाव भी मकबूल है और whatever. It just seemed like you know contrarian होने के लिए लोगों को पुलाव पसंद था। But it really kind of blew my mind, and then वहां से मुझे वो भी अंदाजा होने लगा कि actually पुलाव is the actual national rice dish of Pakistan, right? Like सिंधी हो गए, बलोच हो गए, पश्तून लोग हो गए, पंजाबी हो गए, like
yeah.
पुलाव is, everyone has their own variants of पुलाव, etc. But I think like इसको investigate करने का ख्याल मुझे, क्योंकि और obviously ट्विटर पे सारे वक्त इस किस्म के झगड़े और बहस हो रही होती हैं, और बहुत सारी चीजें मैंने वैसे ही सीखी थी, लाइक आलू बिरयानी में होना चाहिए या नहीं।
Mm, mm,
I think that was something like I googled, and like I came across things, and so there was that interest. But I think really when I moved back to Karachi in 2018, so like like really around this time, one of my friends who's an artist, and a lot of her work is about mapping Karachi and various geographies. और उसने कहा कि why don't you tweet what people's favorite biryani are, and where they like to go, and I tweeted that, and I got like hundreds of responses, and we made an Excel sheet out of it. and we start going to those places और मेरे Instagram पे हुआ है और जब वो मैं करना शुरू हो गया and like again um it was like obviously आप सारे मुख्तलिफ इलाकों में जा रहे हैं शहर के और आपको उससे एक अंदाजा हो रहा है कि शहर कितना बड़ा है और उसके फिर मेरे एक और दोस्त है अली अरकम who's also a journalist and he had this point like he took me to Rangi for chapli kebab और उस वक्त उसने मुझसे एक बात कही कि एक्चुअली कराची का जो फूड कल्चर है तो इट वुड बी अ फॉली टू व्यू इट एज अ कलेक्टिव एज
Right.
लाइक वन फूड कल्चर उसने कहा कि एक्चुअली उसको ऐसा सोचना चाहिए कि और नॉट जस्ट फूड और भी तरीकों में कि इट्स लाइक 8 जजीरे हैं there are 7 8 islands of
Mm.
this city that each have their kind of own little culture and food
Right.
culture etc right or um, Hussainabad ki जैसे food street है is like a more recent phenomenon and like you know basically उसने एक और नजरिया दिया शहर के बारे में कि इसको मतलब यहाँ पे क्योंकि इतने मुख्तलिफ किस्म के अब लोग रह रहे हैं आबादियां हैं इलाके हैं तो उसको एक यू नो टॉप डाउन कलेक्टिव के तौर पे देखना कि ये कराची का फूड
Mm-hmm.
कल्चर इज is a folly.
Mm.
आई थिंक के तो उस टाइम पे उसी वक्त मुझे एक्चुअली और मैं कहता मैं यूट्यूब पे भी काफी देख रहा होता था फूड शोज
Yeah.
और यू नो लाइक एंथनी बोर्डेन ने जिस तरीके से लोग मुख्तलिफ शहरों और कल्चर्स और खाने के तरीकों को शोहरत दी बट एंड इन अ वेरी सोशल पॉलिटिकल
Yeah.
प्रोग्रेसिव काइंड ऑफ वे But even something like BuzzFeed का Worth It है where वो burger खाएंगे at like the cheapest possible, at a mid-range, and at the most expensive
Yeah.
possible. And it was really, there was all these really interesting ways to like talk about food. And I think कि यही होता है um, one of the great things about the internet इसके खास तौर पे जब आपको मतलब एक्सपोजर की जब हम बात करते हैं तो एक जैसे बहुत अहम चीज एक्सपोजर का जो होता है कि जब आप देखते हैं कि और लोग समथिंग दैट यू केयर अबाउट समथिंग दैट यू इंटरेस्टेड इन उसके बारे में बात कर रहे हैं या उसके बारे में एक स्पेसिफिक तरीके से बात कर रहे हैं राइट सो जब आपको नजर आ रहा है कि लोग खाने के बारे में सिर्फ ये नहीं बता रहे आपको कि वो ये अच्छा है उसमें तेल ज्यादा है या कम
Nah.
है बट देर ऑल्सो काइंड इनटू revealing so much more through food.
Love
That's
it.
my cat.
Yeah.
तो उससे फिर आपको क्या कहते हैं खुद भी फिर उस तरीके से सोचने का एतमाद पैदा होता है कि ओके या आई कैन आल्सो थिंक अबाउट माय सिटी लाइक दिस राइट
Yeah.
and so this actually like I think maybe by a few months after putting up those Instagram stories I got in touch with BBC Urdu and I said, can we do a show around this? And we actually went. And the idea was me and a celebrity or an interesting guest,
Right.
didn't necessarily want celebrities, go eat biryanis at two different places. And the people talk about like, what their place, how it started, what was
Right.
ये वो फलाना ढिमकाना और फिर उसके बाद we talk about like whether we like it or not but really talk about everything else also so we shot a pilot episode with my Irfan Janejo the internet's best friend was the first guest
Mm.
and क्या कहते हैं it was actually shot by Abdullah Kusumbi और उसकी एडिट के दौरान उसने मुझसे कहा भी कि मैं म्यूजिक पे भी काम कर रहा हूँ मैं सोच रहा हूँ म्यूजिक पे काम करूँ और उसको वीडियोस की जॉब्स आ रही थी मैंने कहा भाई म्यूजिक म्यूजिक छोड़ो तुम वीडियोस पे तुम्हें पैसे ऐसे मिल रहे हैं उसने अपना एक स्टूडियो सेटअप कर रहा था लाइक तुम
Yeah.
उस पे करो म्यूजिक म्यूजिक साइड पे करते रहना and then like 6 months later like mashallah
Yeah.
Abdullah Kasumbi was everywhere so
Yeah.
goes to show what I know um
This medium,
but
the show was supposed to be for YouTube.
yeah
That's all.
we it was like a 10-12 minute thing we went to Madni Biryani and then we went to the Hyderabad colony one um and उस वक्त भी क्या कहते हैं we kind of shot it and we were kind of figuring out okay like it was sort of as I said it was a pilot so फिर वहां
Mm.
से discussion हो रही थी okay how to turn it into series or whatever, and it took a while. There were some changes happening on their end, and then COVID happened.
Right.
And so, kind of this really fell apart. And at the end of last year, then, and I mean, in the summer of last year, Supriya Nair, the main editor and founder of 52, where this got published, the article, Supriya is one of the best writers I've ever read. And I first read her writing on football on this absolutely amazing website called Run of Play. And I was just like mind blown, कि like एक तो South Asian football writing, and it was just like, best in the world
Mm.
level. I would highly encourage people to check it out. And so I'd followed her work, and then we'd like I'd written a music thing for the Caravan many years ago, and that was again working with Supriya initially, and we would, become friends online as well. And so she messaged me in the summer talking about like, of, I think 2019, talking about um, launching this website that is about working on, and that I think 2019, 2020, I forget the year, but anyways, or so I said, yeah, there's a music piece I have in mind, and maybe I'll do that. And then like I wrote to her saying like, bro, I just don't feel like working on music. And I think that's when like it pivoted to this biryani thing, because I realized, look, it's not going to be a web show. Maybe I can be a long form.
Mm.
And that was again like a really, really amazing thing to happen, because Supriya and then Vikram Shah, who worked with me on this as editors, were really essential to this whole thing looking and coming out the way it did. And right from the start, like they discussed, like, so I feel I should add that in 2018, when I moved back to Karachi, that was after 9 years of living abroad in
Yeah.
Lahore, Islamabad. And I felt very much that like, and being on Twitter also, I was joined Twitter in 2010. And so this entire time I was in exile from Karachi, so to speak. Or and something that was really infuriating was like, that there was all these like people from Pakistan, or people who know, Desis or whatever, and particularly Pakistanis, who had just this very extremely reductive view of Karachi, right?
Mm. Mm.
And in response, Karachiites would try and reply it with things like Karachi is beautiful and
Mm. Mm.
historical, and it's neither of those things, right? Like it's a pretty modern city compared to places like Peshawar, Lahore, Multan,
Yeah.
that are actually ancient cities. It's not beautiful,
No.
and like yeah, the beach is great or whatever, but there's a lot more to what makes this really amazing. And I felt it was very difficult to kind of explain that to other people.
Mm.
And so I feel this was a mission, even when I was conceived as a web series, was really to kind of show that like, okay, there's so many different diverse communities here. Like a friend once said to me that like, and landed on the airport, he was really surprised by how many different languages he heard just while waiting for a cab, which is not what you get in other cities,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that I felt was like a really great way of getting into like, oh, okay, this is why Karachi is interesting.
Mm.
तो ये जो मजमून की भी शुरू से नीयत यही थी कि ये दिखा सकें क्या कराची में क्या चीजें हैं जो like अलग हैं. और and over these few years when I was working on whatever iteration of this project I was working on, I keep Googling stuff up. And in terms of the history, it became very clear that in India, they were like very distinct, like Kolkata biryani, Lucknow biryani, Hyderabadi, Flana Dhimkana. Or यहाँ पे, when you talk about variants, you realize that people don't want the same variants that are Shan Masala variants. And like, is that what's going on here?
Yeah.
Like, it
Yeah.
just was everything, like all our history is really muddled and undocumented. और तो एक वो भी एक दिलचस्पी थी समझने की कि मतलब क्योंकि अब इंडिया जाके तो आप वो बिरयानियां नहीं छक सकते. तो थोड़ी रेसिपी बुक्स वगैरह से बना के देखी और whatever, बट रियली ये समझना चाहता है कि अच्छा, तो कराची में क्या,
Mm.
what is the Karachi variant, or what variants exist in Karachi. And over the years, like, I've been tweeting about some of these things, and whatever I'll put new, like, I was kind of storing it. I was watching stuff, and and I think that's something that, like, is really central to what made this a very satisfying kind of essay to write, क्योंकि क्योंकि इतना टाइम इस पे लगा था, तो बहुत
Mm.
सारी चीजें दिमाग में like independently I thought about them or rejected certain ideas or learned certain ideas, like ये भी था कि again, like जैसे कि when I moved back to Karachi, so when like I kind of reconnected with university friends there.
Yeah.
So one of the first things they did was this guy called Ahmer Naqvi, who's also runs Chop Chop Walk and other stuff, and he has a kind of like a biryani crew, and they're all kind of obsessed. And he's again like I think every time we met, I would just be talking to him about biryani, talking about this guy on the beach who makes tuna biryani, which I really wanted to have. And they're the ones who him and another friend like took me to that Bambino
Yeah.
cinema wala scene. And yeah, this was again back in 2018 or something. And so like what also really helped was that like so many people are very passionate about food and particularly biryani.
Biryani. Yeah.
And तो या सो जब तक ये मतलब लिखना शुरू किया, तो उस वक्त एक बहुत क्लियर आइडिया था कि ये कराची के बारे में वो है। और इवन जब ये शो बन रहा था तो उसका मैं नाम रखा था कराची की बेस्ट बिरयानी, और अभी जो मैंने ट्वीट भी किए हुआ है कराची द बेस्ट बिरयानी, लाइक आई विल बी ऑनेस्ट, दैट्स रियली फॉर लाइक एसईओ पर्पसेस, राइट? लाइक सर्च कराची
Right.
बेस्ट बिरयानी, लाइक something should pop up.
Yeah.
Why not this? But it's really, there's no best in, I mean, I don't know if in anything, but like in food, it's a subjective thing, and like a lot of people don't like biryani, a lot of people like it a certain way,
Yeah.
and so it's really not important which is the best, but it is that like when you find something that's telling you a story or multiple stories, like that's what really the intention behind this was, right? So कि जब आप उस जगह जाएंगे, उस किस्म की बिरयानी और उस बंदे की कहानी क्या है, तो आपको फिर बहुत सारी और कहानियां खुलती हैं,
Yeah.
राइट?
Yeah.
सो जो जो मतलब एक वो था कि आप जो पहले चार किरदार हैं जिनकी मैं बात करता हूँ, वो मुख्तलिफ किस्म के व्हाट वी कॉल मुहाजिर्स, राइट? लाइक
Mm-hmm.
मैं उर्दू स्पीकिंग कहने लगा था कि बट देयर गुजराती स्पीकर्स इन दैट एज वेल,
Right.
सो
Right.
दैट गिव्स यू अनदर इनसाइट इनटू द कंफ्यूजन एंड लेबल्स। मगर उसके बाद जो बाकी चार लोग हैं वो एक तो there's a guy from Chang, there's a guy from Pakhtunkhwa, there's Jamali Saab, who's Karachiite but like Sindhi from like the kind of mainland Sindh, versus Fatma
Yeah.
Majid, who's from the coastal communities. Um, and तो एक तो मतलब इसका एक वही मकसद था कि आपको दिखाएं कि कराची का डाइवर्स है, बट ऑल्सो कि इन सबकी जो जो बिरयानी के साथ कहानी पे जब आप तहकीक करते हैं, तो आपको फिर इनकी लार्जर कम्युनिटीज के बारे में भी कुछ समझ आना शुरू करता है, राइट? सो
Right.
लाइक
Right.
I mean, I think like probably the most exciting moment when I was working on this was ki, like I'd done so much research on the history of biryani. A lot of it was like really bullshit. And then like I found this one guy who I've quoted a lot in the piece, Neeraj, I'm forgetting his last name, who really used primary text to get to the matter. And one of the things he's talking about, which um I don't want to get in too in depth here, but like there's a kind of this theory in North mein biryani separately evolved or South mein separately evolved, and he kind of trashes that and
Of
explains how
India.
it's like a, I mean, yeah, like up before 1947,
Right. Right. North of
South
India. South of
Asia
India. Yeah.
is yeah. So and and he kind of explains like it's a it's informing each other. And so one of the things crucial to it is that many theories are like it's the Arab जो ये Gulf है
Yeah.
उस पे जो Arab traders हैं coming these coastal communities on the South Asian coastline are introducing these meat and rice dish that evolves into the biryani. And then Fatma Majid tells me that yeah, we've been making biryani forever,
Mm.
versus Chef Jamali from Cafe Sindh and Sikandar Saab from Chan Masalas,
Mm.
both kind of explain how Sindhi biryani was an invention in the 80s. And Fatima Jeet, when she tells me this, it kind of like I was just like a euphoric moment, because I'm just like, holy shit, like this is that theory that the coastal communities had this version of the dish that kind of then is refined
Yeah.
and becomes a
Yeah.
biryani, and she's kind of like acknowledging that. एंड उसी तरीके से फिर आपको ये भी इसका एहसास होता है कि जो कोस्टल जो माहीगीर कम्युनिटी है कराची की, लाइक दैट्स द ओरिजिनल कराची,
Yeah.
राइट, लाइक जो कराची की ओरिजिन स्टोरीज है माई कोलाची के
My
बारे
Karachi,
में,
yeah.
वो मतलब इसी इसी माहीगीर कम्युनिटी के बारे में, राइट, एंड दैट्स रियली in the formulation of Karachi is not something that's at the forefront of the mainstream. एंड तो वो मतलब वो एक बड़ा खूबसूरत लम्हा था कि इसमें ना ही सिर्फ बिरयानी की तारीफ कि मतलब एक जो कन्वेंशन है, जो स्टेटस को है, जो लोगों को लगता है कि वो मुगलों ने दरबार में बनाई,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, which is not incorrect, but उसकी आपको एक गहराई समझ आती है। और सिमिलरली कि कराची शहर जो है, जिसकी कि कौन सी कराची वाला कौन है
Yeah, yeah,
और
yeah.
कौन अपने आप को कहलाता है, उसमें जो फर्क है आपको वो भी
Yeah.
नजर आता है।
Mm.
And that was really what I wanted to do with this.
Yeah, but how, and you mentioned at the start of this, coming to, how the article came to be. At the start of it, you mentioned that some years ago you had done like a poll on Twitter, yes, and you had like 100 names or something of places to go in Karachi. In this piece, you have about, I think, 6 to 8 people, including Chan Masala Wale Sahab. How do you begin to, when you're like, "Achha, this is what I'm going to do," and okay, this article is going to be biryanis, like the method to talk about Karachi. How do you decide which places to go to of those 100? Like, is it just location kidhar kidhar thi and they split into those 8 islands? Yeah. Was the quality of the biryani more important than the background? What was that thought process?
आई थिंक तो क्वालिटी वाला वही सवाल है ना कि मतलब अब जो मुझे बिरयानी पसंद है किसी और को पसंद है इज कैन बी वास्टली डिफरेंट।
Yeah.
और तो मतलब हाँ ठीक है, there's a way to differentiate good and bad
Sure,
biryani,
sure.
but at the same time, like I didn't want, that's not something I was interested in proving.
You're not rating it.
To a
Yeah.
certain वो ना कि मतलब तो उस पे फिर जो जो कुछ देखिए, तो सबसे पहले तो ये एज आई सेड इट वाज लाइक अ टीवी शो, तो उस वक्त तो हर एपिसोड के लिए दो चाहिए, तो आई जस्ट नीडेड दोज दैट वर कंसिडर्ड टू बी famous
Right.
biryani
Right. Right.
places, right? And one list emerges from there. Um, and kid, while I was making those lists, I would like call up those places and start talking to them or whatever, और थोड़ी मतलब कहानियां भी निकलना शुरू हुई। जैसे मिसाल के तौर पे अल फरीद जो मुझे खा के हुआ पसंद आई थी, मैं उसको फोन किया जो इमरान जो वो चलाते हैं उसको, तो लाइक और उसने अपनी कहानी बताना शुरू किया, जस्ट लाइक ब्रो ओके दिस इज डेफिनेटली इन राइट। देन आप क्या कहते हैं कि तो एक one place that I really wanted, Madni biryani, I chased for like a year and a half, which is like came easily top of that poll I conducted, or not poll, but just like asked people to, like it was the
Yeah.
most commonly suggested name. They didn't want to do interviews. They just done one on air. Why? And it seemed to be, I don't know, they were just like totally against it. And I was like, they seemed to hint that it was like religious reasons as well or whatever. I don't
Acha.
know. But like, वो कभी भी नहीं कर पाए हम लोग। एंड उसके बाद मतलब जैसे गौसिया नल्ली मैंने सिर्फ इसलिए चुनी थी क्योंकि बोथ नल्ली वाज लाइक a new innovation kind of thing, and it was really big on the internet. um, and then like I mean I was also kind of cognizant as I was going through names, like एक चीज ये भी होती है कि एक्सेस, राइट। मदनी की
Mm.
मैंने इसलिए कहानी बताई कि बहुत सारी जगहें थी जो शायद जैसे बहुत बहुत लोगों ने मदनी और अल रहमान का नाम लिया, तो अल रहमान के जो ओनर हैं वो शायद इस्लामाबाद में रहते हैं और जो मैनेजर था वो बात करना नहीं चाह रहा था, और सिमिलरली मदनी भी नेवर आई नेवर गॉट टू स्पीक टू द ओनर, आई ट्राइड फॉर
Right.
लाइक many 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 months. तो एक तो ये भी बात थी, पर उसके साथ साथ मतलब मैं ये भी चाह रहा था कि I wanted it to showcase diversity, right? So like अब जैसे मैं मलंग गया, मलंग मलंग basically like if you like aloo and biryani, I think like it's the most incredible in the city that I've had. I don't know what they're doing, and even he was kind of like, "Yeah, whatever, man, just put some aloo in my biryani." I was like, "Bro, you're doing something. It tastes amazing." बट क्या कहते हैं कि मलंग मुझे जब मैं वहां गया और मुझे अंदाजा हुआ कि ये पश्तून बंदा चला रहा है, क्योंकि उससे पहले मेरा प्लान वही था कि मुझे अली अरकम ने ही बताया था कि औरंगी में दो तीन जगहें जो run by Pashtun chefs, and I wanted to go there, but I found this guy. I was like, okay, great. एक तो एक ये भी like कि जितनी उसमें diversity थी, I wanted to also get diversity of the types of biryani. So like I really chased this guy for the Bora version of the biryani for like again months.
Mm.
And he was at one point like we had the interview lined up, and then there was announced that the Sayyidna was visiting, I think
Yeah.
Colombo or something, and
Yeah.
like so he was just like, bro,
Yeah.
your article isn't that important. And then there's a husband and wife that do a crab biryani,
Mm.
and they had to shut down because of COVID, and they were, a lot of people that I was speaking to were really stressed about COVID. One of the chefs, like one of my favorite people to speak to, passed away before this came to print. I went to meet his brother yesterday and shared the link, and like we both talked a lot about him. Um, and yeah, so coming back to it, so yeah, so I wanted to obviously represent like the diversity in terms of ethnicities, in terms of like types of biryanis, and also area wise. And another one that like I couldn't find a good person to speak to, Liari mein chola biryani hoti hai.
Acha.
Like we Ibrahim Hedri again. I was also going because I wanted to get like cover as much of the city as possible. Um, क्योंकि एक चीज ये भी हुई थी कि after like I done half the interviews, I started mapping my places that I was intending to go to, and all those 4 or 5 places were basically like if you map Bandar Road, which was the
Mm.
original Shara Faisal,
Yeah.
the main artery of the city, they're marking that route.
Right.
And if you look at that map, you can see that. I posted that map on Twitter. Um, and हाँ तो मतलब अब वही था कि okay, I wanted to get like जैसे कि Kurangi was another place I was looking at, but Ibrahim Hedri हो गया, I was like okay, that covers it. So that was really the thing. Like I think because एक चीज जो बहुत ज्यादा हमने ये जो म्यूजिक वाली किस्म में भी बात की थी,
Mm.
और जनरली पाकिस्तानी, क्योंकि पाकिस्तान वैसे ही बहुत बड़ा मुल्क है, तो वो जो अगर आप जो भी टॉप 5-10% लोग हैं उनको अपने आप को भी देख रहे हैं तो वो भी मतलब करोड़ों में तादाद है, राइट? और वो अपने आप ही को देख के कहते हैं कि ये है हमारा
Yeah.
शहर, ये
Yeah.
कराची है या ये पाकिस्तान है. और दिस सो मच हैपनिंग एट द मार्जिन दैट लाइक इवन मतलब कि हम लोग खुद जब वो अपनी ही मुल्क की चीजें देखते हैं तो कहते हो वाओ व्हाट एन अमेजिंग, एंड इट्स जस्ट लाइक ब्रो, ओपन योर आईज, एंड
Yeah.
आई इंक्लूड माय सेल्फ इन दिस, राइट? लाइक आई वाज वेरी um, lucky to be kind of encouraged to go down this path, and because I met people that I've mentioned so far who um, made help inspire me that way. So yeah, so that was like how the choices were coming, and I mean I didn't try. Fatma Majid के साथ मुझे खाने का मौका नहीं मिला था, and also she's like a activist, she's not a commercial kind of cook. But like yeah, like all these biryanis were had very different kind of feels to them, right? So for example, जो नल्ली biryani है वो is not very spicy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's but like it's a spectacle, like you see the nalli drop and
Yeah.
dissolve, and
Dissolve.
that's
Yeah.
fun. So yeah.
Were these people that you all spoke to, because everybody was operating also at very different scales? कुछ लोगों के proper restaurant थे. The guy with Bambino was just out of a Suzuki, and Chan Foods wale obviously is running a huge business. Uh, there was what I noticed a lot also was people's own perception with what they're doing differed like hugely in terms, I don't know, maybe that's like a socioeconomic way of viewing things where one guy was like, he was like वो तीन मसालों का जादू है और मैं देख के धुएं को देख के बता देता हूँ बिरयानी बनी कैसी है. The other guy is like मैं तो बस जुम्मे को बेचता हूँ ब्रो और वो बस बरकत का सीन गुड है इसका. And then like was any of that, because you went after watching the internet videos, right? Like initially that was like the oversimplification, but usme everyone they show has, or either the presenter or the people running the shirt, they have some level of sophisticated awareness of ingredients, recipes, background. But here is very varied in terms of people's own relationship and appreciation or whatever their context is. Uh, were you expecting things to be this varied when you're writing about it? Was there something, some angle ke log mujhe history batayenge, log mujhe apna they'll hint at some secret recipe blend or some relationship? Was that any challenge at all or any course correction needed in your mind when that came across?
I think multiple things to address here. सबसे
Hmm.
पहले तो मतलब जो मैं disagree करूँगा कि and I hope we came across that in the article, but everyone that I spoke to had a very sophisticated
Right.
riff expert understanding of what they were doing. ठीक है, मगर ये एक चीज और जो जहां तक के was I expecting people to share secret recipes or historical things or whatever, I wasn't, because like पाकिस्तान में again क्योंकि तारीख आपको officially जो पढ़ाई जाती है वो एक सर से पैर झूठ होती है, तो फिर उसके बाद जो गैप्स जो गैप्स इमर्ज करते हैं उसमें लोग अपनी जो भी कही सुनी है उससे
Sure.
फिल अप कर देते हैं, राइट? तो अक्सर again, I've been like a journalist for 14, 15 years now, and like, so I've had plenty of experience of trying to talk to people about something, and they're telling you stuff that you
Yeah.
know is false, but like that's the kind of history they have. Um, so again, that was not an expectation I had. It was a frustration I had. In fact, there's everything that you try and look at, there's not proper research done on it. Um, uh, but like it, I'm totally blanking out on what the main question was.
Was
What
there
were you saying?
any?
Okay, yeah, the artist. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. बट यहाँ फिर जो तो फिर बात क्या आती है, जैसे ना क्रिकेट पे जब आप इंटरव्यूज करते हैं ना, तो पाकिस्तान लाइक एक बिग फ्रस्ट्रेशन है कि हमारे क्रिकेटर्स को भी और सहाफी और आई डोंट लाइक, आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू गेट इनटू हु इज एट फॉल्ट हियर, बट बेसिकली
Yeah.
जब आप उनसे पूछते हैं कि आपने मैच अच्छा खेला, तो वो कहते हैं हाँ जी, आप प्लेयर्स की दुआ, माँ की दुआ, अल्लाह
Yeah.
का शुक्र,
Yeah.
फलाना ढिमकाना। तो वो एक तरीका ये भी है कि one of the reasons they're also speaking like that is because anything that athletes say is like used against them.
Sure. Sure.
But it's also like okay, it's very difficult for like you can understand when you're talking to them that they have a very deep knowledge of the craft, but they're not able to articulate
Articulate.
into
Yeah.
you that you're used to listening global media being
Yeah.
produced that man. So that's been a like kind of um been a long standing challenge where you have to kind of be able to articulate what you want them to say to you. तो मतलब आपको अपना वही सवाल आप नहीं पूछ सकते कि अच्छा आप एक आर्टिस्ट हैं क्या सोच रहे हैं, because they're not thinking like that.
Yeah.
So you have to get to a place where he thinks like that, right? So like अब जो वही जो तीन मसाले धुएं देग वाली जो है, तो इमरान के साथ I ended up for one way or another. I once ran into him at a test match in National Stadium. He was selling biryani there. So we've been speaking on this for a very long time. So when I finally do this interview, there's a different level of familiarity, and
Right.
he starts
Right.
talking about this. Right? With the others, like it's very obvious that they're, like I mean, जैसे वही जो कह रहा है कि जुम्मे की बरकत है और कोई सीन नहीं है, ब्रो आप क्यों जाके बिरयानी पिकअप पे ले जाके बम्बीने जा रहे हो? जो he has a catering business and he has a restaurant,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So again, like yeah, in terms of scale, like other than Fatma Majid, who was like not it's cooking for a restaurant or anything. Everyone else has a restaurant except and then Shan Masalas, right? So they're all in like as professionals, and they all had at least a shop
Yeah. Yeah.
that was very very kind of popular, if not more than that. But yeah, so he was just like he kept insisting इसमें कोई खास special cheese नहीं है, etc., etc. And maybe sure, that's fine. But in that conversation, he would keep he would say कि नहीं ये ऐसे नहीं होता, ये जैसे कि सेला और बासमती क्यों इस्तेमाल होता है. So he can immediately break down to me कि सेला की ये advantage थी, बिरयानी की ये बासमती की ये थी, etc. तो वो एक चीज मतलब फिर मलंग के साथ भी यही बात है कि वो कहे जा रहा था कि बस मैं सिर्फ पैसे के लिए करता हूँ, बट ही इज आल्सो एक्सप्लेनिंग हाउ तो अगर जैसे आप वो सुशी शेफ्स वगैरह के ऊपर जो यूट्यूब वीडियोस होते हैं ना, सो दे ऑलवेज स्टार्ट कि सुबह के 3 बजे वो बंदा फिश मार्केट जा रहा है और वो एक एक फिश उठा के चेक कर रहा है और वो सबको जानता है, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
basically the idea is that the chef is like looking to get the best ingredients, that are freshest, etc., etc. These guys are going through all that pain, and they're doing that to create like a working class dish, really, right? Like, he cannot, not the working class can't afford it every day, but they can afford it as a treat, if nothing
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
And so it's that's a really incredible thing, because it's very obvious कि मतलब आप जिससे भी बात करते हैं उसने इतने अच्छे बिरयानी बनाई है that they have like a very deep and artistic understanding of it. And I think कि obviously वो मेरे ऊपर था कि मैं उनसे वो बात कहलवा सकूं, उनको मैं समझा सकूं या नहीं, राइट? सो मतलब इवन जो गौसिया नल्ली वाला गाय was like great at talking about how awesome Gausiya Nalli is, biryani is. He really didn't dwell too much on the fact that this was probably like, the most the biggest invention in biryani in like a while, right?
Yeah.
And the idea is that he's still going, uh, taking that kind of pulao route as well, and dum and everything. But that part, like, he was just like, yeah, it's awesome that we did that, and kind of kept moving on to it, rather than like I kept trying to ask him, कि मतलब क्यों सोचा?
Yeah.
Yeah, was it
Yeah.
an accident? Was it on purpose? Like, what did you think? And so these things, I think LA maybe, I think his name is James Woods. He's died, but वो LA Times का food writer था, and he went to all the like food trucks
Yeah.
and like kind of hole in the wall taco places, and he wrote like brilliant things about them. And now it's like a really well respected thing. And that's really food culture everywhere. I think, I don't know the names, but like same thing happened in every like New York, London, where may like, you know, and that's really what we have to do or can do over here as well.
Mm. I was thinking also there's another thing that I was thinking of since you mentioned it at the start, and that sort of links to the music thing, and also because I keep trying to put some sort of overarching umbrella on things. But I think Nadir and Rizwan were also saying this at some point. In our way limited tabka of society and visibility, वगैरह, uh, food is the main cultural thing that appears to be consistent across the recent decades. Baki arts वार्ट्स का scene तो खराब हो गया, or it's like volatile or whatever. Because कराची की कंस्ट्रक्शन में आपको कोई वो नहीं दिखती, हेरिटेज अर्बन बिल्डिंगें बन रही हैं जैसी भी हों, और वो इस तरह के media type चीजों में there's limitations and in terms of progress and whatnot. What's the question here?
Are you
Do
saying
you?
there's more consistency in food?
I'm saying that food is one of the last few remaining real examples of what is now Pakistan ka culture and cultural heritage. It seems to people in available in terms of you're already smiling about this. How do you like? Is any of this getting to something you like would agree with in terms like because everyone knows biryani ki heritage, हाँ भाई हमारे खानदान में बनती आ रही है, there's like traditions in all of this. Music शायद इतना नहीं दिख रहा, the architecture में लोगों को art नहीं दिख रहा, textile is commoditized. Is this
Yeah,
real or is this just
okay,
burger
I'll just
bache
stop you
thinking?
here.
Yeah,
This, yeah,
yeah.
I feel it's not a burger issue. It's a human issue. It's where like when people get older, they look back at the time when their bodies was at its physiological
Oh
peak,
no.
which is
Acha.
around your 20s,
Yeah.
and everything that happened. Like, I mean, there's various theories on this. Some say it's the your teenage years, some say it's your 20s or whatever. But like everything that happened then is
Okay.
in your head, like the peak of how things were.
Okay.
Right. So like the best football team was the team that I supported when I was a
Huh.
kid, or the best music era was the music I listened to when I was growing up. And that's a problem that like every generation has. And like maybe those generations change it, that like people who grew up in the 70s will say, okay, oh, हमारे ज़माने में politics ऐसी थी और फलाना ऐसा था, and the 90s might not care about the political, talk about the music, but this is this kind of lamenting that things have gone and changed and whatever is like a very common human
Hmm.
problem that's lasted forever.
No, I
It's, you
think also
can
like
find
in,
that.
I mean in terms of like food as artistic expression, in terms of the
Yeah, and
mediums of
I would
artistic
say that
expression.
that's what I was getting at. कि
Huh.
अगर आप बिल्कुल शॉर्ट टर्म में भी देखें तो food, I mean, it like just restaurants are one of the most volatile industries in all of capitalism.
Hmm.
So it's very difficult for kind of heritage to maintain that way,
Right.
firstly.
Right.
Secondly, कि जो जैसे ये बात है ना कि हमारे खानदान में बिरयानी बड़े सालों से पकती आ रही है, तो ये other than maybe like families from certain parts of India is not true for people in Pakistan, right? But even when you take something like ji chai, kadhai, like
Hmm.
aloo ki bhujia, lal mirch, वगैरह, these are all new world food items.
Okay.
So, like they've been in your cuisine for maybe like 200 years, and that's not chai. Chai is not in this list, but the rest of them.
Sure.
And then chai was something that the South Asians didn't drink until like the colonizers did like this massive, and this has been talked about in recent years. So food is in fact one of the places where you see the most rapid sort of cultural changes. It allows more like all of these things again that I'm interested in. They allow like this subversiveness where like where normal society doesn't allow you to interact with margins or different ideas. These like music or intricate or food, we will kind of be okay with tasting the ideas of the
Hmm.
other, so to speak, or the food or whatever, right? So वही चीज है कि मतलब अब जैसे कि बिरयानी और कढ़ाई दोनों जैसे एक things I'm really interested in because they are kind of um, they mark maybe like urbanization or modernization or like a certain community's foods that have kind of gone across
Hmm.
and why they're popular. The answer is as much in about like how delicious they are as in terms like various violence and power politics being enacted, right? Like एक अगर मैं छोटी सी मिसाल दूं कि अभी it's a very big controversy that when you kind of leave like so when you leave Karachi and entering Balochistan going towards Hub and everything, there's a lot of like there's a lot of like highway ke saath, kind of one
Hmm.
room shops
Hmm.
and restaurants, and all those restaurants are like by their names. And I asked her, I asked some locals, like they're owned by Pashtuns, and there's like a huge influx of Pashtuns from like near Quetta and stuff, and a lot of them are coming because of like 40 years of violence. But it's also like the land is being Baloch land is being given away to non-Baloch people and all of that, and so the food that's being eaten, like the food that's being served at those places is kadhai, right? And like the people who are buying kadhai at these places are most likely not locals who
Hmm.
and who are kind of being erased on multiple levels, right? So the Kadhai almost kind of represents that erasure also,
Right.
um, right? तो उस तरीके से मतलब कि I feel food maybe कि जो so many places that we grew up with are shut down, or so many things have like kind of changed. And I'm sure like even though it feels like biryani has always tasted the same, like you can look at recipes and stuff from the past, like things have so everything kind of really evolves. And again, like um really when interesting things about food are to be talked about, it's restaurants and commercial things are not as interesting as really talking about what happens inside the homes. Like women almost exclusively are cooking, and they're like the way that in the 80s and 90s like Chinese food became a really big thing जो लोगों के घरों पे पकता था. And like garlic mayo and stuff like that. There's a lot of different things that have kind of get accepted. So I think food for me, one of the reasons it's interesting is precisely because it changes so much and so quickly and absorbs things that like normal social politics don't allow.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think you know I think like that's not how I would view things.
हाँ
If
वही
it's
I
one of the
think
last stable things.
हाँ मैं कह रहा हूँ ना कि I keep trying to put like some big umbrella on top of like saving Pakistan type umbrella on top of things. Two things before I let you go. Was there anything while you were doing this, because you have a lot of preparation already and you hired a lot of direction, but still while putting this particular piece together, was there anything that was fully like unexpected, yeah, sort of changed your perceptions about something, or was it all new information perhaps but not uh revelatory?
I think वो जो मैंने फातिमा मजीद वाली किस्सा सुनाया था was
Yeah.
probably the most kind of biggest jaw dropping moment. I think बहुत सारी छोटी छोटी खूबसूरत सी चीजें थी. Like I think it was just for me, like again कितने सालों से कराची में था भी नहीं, तो वो एक
Hmm.
even before I started writing this or thinking of this as something, like just going to all those biryani places was really wonderful experience. कि मतलब आप एक जिसी तरीके से आप दोस्तों से या महबूब से बहुत अरसे के बाद मिल रहे हैं, और
Hmm.
वो रिश्ता वापस खानदान से जब आप मिलते हैं, like even if you spend a lot of time apart, like the familiarity of many years is there, वो फौरन एकदम से कनेक्शन बन जाती है. तो उसी तरीके से एक जगह के साथ भी आपकी वही रिश्ता, आप उसको वापस रिवाइव कर सकते हैं, और वो करना एक बहुत ही मजेदार एक्सपीरियंस था. एंड आई थिंक आई मीन it was just, I think, as even in the experience of Twitter and social media, and how it's come out, like so far, like it's been the most unique one I've had. Is just like so many um just usually, like there's people saying shitty things about whatever you to say or write, like 20-30% of the responses are
Yeah.
like that. And this wasn't. And that's really a big that was just a really wonderful way to experience it. And I think also I would want my younger self to know this, and like other people who work and write and create, like I think maybe for me, like, and all the times I'm writing, like definitely nothing has ever felt really as you know uh, as satisfying
Hmm.
as this experience has been. And I feel like you're kind of also chasing that when you're creating things, when you're writing any kind of creation, like so the joy that comes from creating, and when things come right. And like I was talking to my friend Hassan Chima about what winning the PSL was like. It was like, and we talked about certain things. Obviously, these are very two different experiences. But something he said which really struck me was that, like, that weird feeling that everything you planned went exactly the way it was meant to, which very rarely happens in life. And I think as a creator, as a human being, you're really kind of striving for that very often. And especially in the creative process, a lot of times it feels like it's never going to happen or whatever. And I think I'm really grateful for the experience that I've had with this. And like another thing Chima said, that like all the random stupid things that I'd been doing in my life led up to this, and like that was again something really spoke to me. And I feel like, yeah, with everyone else as well, like the what they talk about, the grind and the discipline and whatever, like
Hmm.
it can feel stupid, but like this for me was really a great बहुत अच्छी मिसाल थी कि भाई ये जो लोग बातें कर रहे हैं सिर्फ बातें नहीं रहे हैं, इसका इसके पीछे एक सोच है, और एक एक्सपीरियंस है, जो जब when you have it, it's really worth it.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, like I'm again, to all of everyone who helped me, everyone who spoke to me, the editors at 52, like I'm really grateful to help me have experienced this. Yeah.
I was going to ask what you hope people take away from the thing, but I think what रहने देते हैं, people should probably take away different things by reading your piece. So I guess what I'll ask then to conclude is this
I hope that like people who are not from Karachi,
yeah.
next time they decide on social media to talk about food, like really, really
Yeah.
reconsider.
Will you be doing more of this? And do you have a next target? You mentioned kadai.
Um,
Like more of this
I
yani
think
ke
like
food writing.
yeah, definitely. I definitely find food a really exciting topic to think about and write about or create stuff around. Um, I think like I don't have anything particular in mind, but there's like a lot of really interesting things happening, particularly in Karachi. And I've been wanting to do this. I think like मैं इसलिए इतना हिचकिचा रहा हूँ क्योंकि at the same time मतलब ना कोई ऐसा इरादा नहीं है कि मैं अपने लिए
Hmm.
बस अब ये नेक्स्ट है और ये है और वो है, क्योंकि एक ही चीज जिसमें ये भी सीखी है कि मतलब क्योंकि इसका कोई अभी भी मतलब ये नहीं है कि बस अब मैं बिरयानी से थक गया हूँ, कि इसका कोई एंड पॉइंट नहीं था।
Yeah.
उस वजह से जो ये जो पूरा सफर था went to a lot of directions that I wasn't expecting it to go, and that really were essential in making this what it became. So I think like, just for anything that I'm kind of working on, if I have that ability, I don't need to foreign se kuch karna hai is pe. So that's the thing. But at the same time, like I think I really want to be working in food, and like there's a lot of kind of ways to tell stories through
Yeah.
food, and that's something I really, really want to do in like different capacities. But I think at the same time, like uh, I just at this moment just want to enjoy what this article has been about, and like आगे जो होना होगा will figure itself out.
Right. हाँ अभी तो आया मतलब it's been like a day. ठीक है. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? I know you have to go, but is there anything else that you think was important that I missed?
um, nahi, and I think like again just fucking social media, like जो वो अभी वही ट्विटर वाली वीडियो में बात कर रहा था, I think like what I would qualify is that I think you know, a lot of these fights on Twitter, etc., are about things that we feel really strongly about, and then like we just kind of arguing about it. But I think this really deserves, if you really feel strongly about it, for you to kind of engage with it in more meaningful ways, right? And like maybe I don't know what that can be. It can be like talking about it, it can be trying to poke it yourself, it can be learning something about it. Doesn't matter, but I think ये बहुत वो एक रिवॉर्डिंग तरीका है अगर आप किसी चीज के बारे में आपको इतनी जज्बाती हैं कि आप उस पर अजनबियों के साथ इंटरनेट पे झगड़े कर रहे हैं, तो उस पे फिर मतलब जरूरी ये भी है कि आप उसको सिर्फ एक वही आप मकसद ना हो उसका, like I think for me again, talking about food and obviously like I love eating, but also as in different parts, like the first time you're living away from home, या आप अकेला रहना शुरू करते हैं या शादी होती है, जो भी हो रहा होता है, and you start cooking, you start like eating a different cuisine and everything. So it's really rewarding to think about those things, and I think like that's something I would really say that that's something I really learned from it. Okay, it's fun to have obviously jagre वगैरह, but if you really care about something, just kind of engage with it more meaningfully.
Yeah, I would say that I think most people just care about the jagra and they're like, bas theek hai. Itna hi karna hai. Ahmer Naqvi, thank you as always for your time. Yeah, I
Thank
think
you so
that's
much
it.
for having me.
Yeah. Okay, ji. You know who he is. If you don't know who I am, we'll put the links below and the article. और आप जरूर जाइए पढ़िए. Do you think it would be good to translate this to Urdu?
Yeah, I
No?
think like it would be something that I was thinking about, particularly because like a lot of the quotes, उनकी जान उर्दू में ही
Yeah.
आपको
I saw that you put up
महसूस
the
होती है.
thing also.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's something I would definitely consider.
ठीक है. Before I ask any questions, I'll end this then. ठीक है जी. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Bye everyone.